establishing a coaching program. Definitely excited to have you here and appreciate your participation. Of course, given that this is a webinar with lots of people in it, unfortunately, everyone is in the mute mode. We do want to ask your questions. So some of you submitted questions ahead of time, and we made sure we're addressing those as we go through today's webinar. For additional questions that come up, please type them into the question panel in your control panel for today's webinar. Definitely want to make sure we're answering your information. Now, we do have a quick 30 minutes to cover this. The Center for Coaching Solutions is obviously targeting coaching programs that are within organizations. That's where our focus is for today's information. Having said that, we do realize some of you are actually, yes, you're starting coaching programs inside your company, or you're operating them and want more ideas. Some of you are serving in a consulting capacity where you're supporting companies that are creating coaching programs or working toward a coaching culture. So there'll be insights there as well. Those of you that do coaching as a business, I know you're interested in this information. I do realize it does mean tweaking it. So yes, we're talking about having a coaching program inside a company. For those of you that have a coaching program as a business, you'll gain ideas from this, and some of these ideas you'll be thinking, okay, how am I going to apply that in my business? And I am guessing you'll have lots of fun. Feel free to ask your questions on that as well. So what are we talking about today? Our agenda. If you're going to establish a coaching program, we're going to talk about who, when, where, and how. So let's dig into these key topics. First off, the who. When we say who, we mean who buys in to having a coaching program in the organization. We want to talk about who's going to organize and manage the coaching program, who does the coaching, and then, of course, who is coached in that coaching program. So starting out with who buys in. It starts at the top and it trickles down. So creating that buy-in with the upper level of management. And from there, you're working with your middle management, and you're spreading it out to everyone. Now, of course, we've done a webinar on creating buy-in. The recording to that is on our YouTube channel, and we will update that periodically and offer it again. So do watch for that, anticipate it, and check it out. The process of buy-in very often is identifying what the needs are within the organization, figuring out how this is supporting addressing those needs or doing it directly, and then providing some of the research to back up statistics for that. And then as you spread that out with the management, what you want to make sure you're doing is communicating that effectively throughout the organization so everyone's aware of what it is you're doing, what the reasons are for it, and then, of course, setting up the benefits to having it. As far as who's going to organize and actually manage the coaching program, you got lots of options, of course, and a lot of it depends on the structure of the company. So very often you'll find it's done within organizational development departments. That's optimal, or an organizational leadership alternatively. And then, of course, human resources departments often take on having coaching programs. Ultimately, whoever is going to organize and manage this program, you want them to have credibility within the organization. That means the top-level management all the way through everyone that's working there. That credibility and also respect, because what that means is when they are providing the information, promoting the program, etc., it's more readily accepted in terms of having the program in your company. Now, who's going to actually do the coaching? Well, you want to have people that are trained and certified. Interesting report done by the ICF, they said the #1 threat to the coaching profession is untrained coaches. Because what happens is, that's where you get these misunderstandings. Within companies, people think that a coach is the same as a mentor, and it's completely different. Or they think it's the same as training or managing or other capacities, and it's so very different. So having someone who is trained in coaching is how you are going to get the results. In addition to that, keep in mind where you get them trained is going to make a difference. You're developing competencies. So the International Coach Federation, the ICF, has published 11 core competencies for coaches. These are the competencies you want to develop. So when you have a training program, you want it addressing those competencies. The American Management Association actually did a study on this, and they said most often with companies who are starting programs, what they're doing is creating this internal training for their internal coaches, and that is also the least effective. The study said the best way to do that is have external training for the internal coach. Then you also want to make sure they're coached, a coach for the coaches. So typically the coach that is coaching the coaches is someone who is in part of managing that program, running it, etc. So you're going to have coaching for the coaches as well as coaching other people. And then, of course, you want to make sure that the people who are serving as coaches have a number of resources available to them. Now, as a great example for this, currently we're running a blog series talking about putting together a program manual, and some of the blog posts are talking about what are the resources you have available for people in that coaching program. Now, in a company, next, of course, is who's coached. So we talked about creating the buy-in, managing it, doing the coaching. Now we've got to have the people we actually coach. Well, one of the first places a lot of companies are going is they're looking at their high potential. They're looking at their leaders that are in transition. They're moving up, they're expanding their workload or their area of responsibility. Other things are going on. There's changes in the organization, etc. So those are the top places companies are considering in terms of who is coached. Of course, at the executive level, in many organizations, having a coach is very much like, okay, you have arrived, you have the corner office with the window. So at the executive level, it makes a difference. At the management level, absolutely. And you also want it at the staff level. Now, we talked about who is doing the coaching. I want to share another piece from that same study I mentioned on the American Management Association. They said when you have a coaching program, what you want is internal coaches for entry-level through mid-level management. And then you want external coaches for the highest levels of management. They found that's how you're getting the best results. So you have people throughout the organization, and this actually supports creating the coaching culture. Now our next question was, when does this coaching actually happen? When are you doing it? So when to plan, we got to talk about that. When to start the program, when to coach people in the program. So let's dive through our whens. First off, when to plan now. Coaching is absolutely the organizational development tool of choice, and it's because of the impact, the return on investment for it. So the sooner you get going with your planning, the better positioned you are to launch it when the timing is appropriate. You want to look at your opportunity to maximize what you're doing with your coaching program. You want to look at possibilities for growth for the organization. And in some cases, it's an opportunity for creating turnaround with the company and with what's going on. So when to start a program? Well, first you got to create the buy-in. Because without the buy-in, a coaching program is going to struggle at best. So it goes back to how do you create that buy-in? As I mentioned, we've got different recordings of webinars on the YouTube channel. There's one on creating the buy-in. Check that one out as well. You want that happening at all levels. You start on the top, and then you create that trickle-down effect. You want to start it when you're prepared. If we simply dive in, okay, we're going to have a coaching program, we don't have all the details worked out, yeah, you're going to struggle, and you're going to have people start getting impressions of, oh, yeah, they don't really know what they're doing or that kind of thing, which impacts the success of the program. So that means creating your plan, having your process in place for what you're doing, how you're doing it, knowing who the people are that are involved at all the different levels. Now, where do you actually do the coaching? Well, start with where to find coaches, where to coach, and also the where to train. So let's dive into the wheres. Where do you find coaches? On an internal level, you've got people in a number of different positions that are set up to be coaches. So very often, someone who's in a leadership role is a great person. Someone who is a manager or a supervisor. Now, of course, this creates a little bit of a mixed blessing because on the one hand, teaching them coaching skills enhances their effectiveness with the people that they do manage or supervise. On the other hand, when you think about what a coaching relationship is and what it means, if somebody is being coached by their direct supervisor or manager, there's a great possibility, highly likely, that you're actually limiting the outcome opportunities of that coaching relationship. You see, the bottom line is coaching is designed to give that individual a chance to explore all of their different possibilities and be aware of their own competing priorities. Well, if they're working with their direct manager, they're going to be hesitant to share some information and to really think about it out loud, and that's going to limit their strategy development opportunity. So leaders, managers, and supervisors very often are great people to tap. You want to give them the training to support that coaching culture, and what you do is you have them coach people that are in a different department. Some organizations call them silos, or they report to a different leader or manager. So you have them coaching each other's people, if you will, and of course you definitely are going to have a conversation of how you're managing any information. Great place for coaches is your HR department. HR professional, coaching is considered part of what they do. If somebody is a training professional, coaching is considered a core competency for what they do. So it makes a lot of sense. And then, of course, your organizational development and organizational leadership departments are going to have people for tapping to coach. If you're looking for external coaches, so we talked about having internal for the entry level all the way up through mid-level management, looking for external coaches that are going to work with your higher level executives. One of the most common places people go is referrals. It's great because you have an idea of what their experience is. You want to ask them about their training ethics, that kind of thing. There are companies like the Center for Coaching Solutions that provide coaches to you. And then by researching. How do people research? Some go on LinkedIn and look for coaches that way. Some people go to Amazon and look up any authors of books or materials on coaches. And people actually contact coach training schools and say, hey, who have you got that you've trained, those kinds of things. Another great resource is the International Coach Federation itself because they list all their member coaches. So a lot of options in terms of external. Now, the training itself, where do you do that? For external coaches, you're going to ask them about the training they've got. For internal coaches, you're looking at having a training program. Back to that American Management Association study. When you have internal coaches, it is most effective for them to have external training. Now, external training for internal coaches, sometimes it's a cost consideration. So then what you're doing is looking at, okay, how many people are we looking at training? What are the options? Is it something where we can send them to classes, 1 or 2 people at a time? Is it something we want to bring someone in to a training here? Is it something where we can make arrangements to have one of our people train to train them? And these are all possibilities for you. The bottom line is you want outside information. Coaching is different than what is normal. And so getting the training that's very specific to coaching typically involves bringing in an outside person. Now, where do you actually conduct the coaching in your organization? You've got options here as well. Sometimes you want to do it face-to-face. Sometimes you're doing it online. Sometimes you're doing it on the telephone. So let's talk some pros and cons. Face-to-face, a lot of people go there first. They like that idea. They like the idea of that connection, being in the same room, in the same space with somebody. And the other thing I hear a lot of coaches say is, yeah, I like to read their body language, observe what's going on there. Well, let's think about it from the perspective of the person that is being coached. Just like you're watching their body language, they're watching the body language of the coach. And guess what happens? Pretty soon, without even really being aware of it, they start speaking to how the coach is reacting or their interpretation of how the coach is reacting. And very few people have the level of training to really understand what different facial expressions, gestures, posture, etc. mean. So you'll find that it starts changing the coaching conversation over time. The other thing that occurs when you're face-to-face, the coach is taking notes. And in a face-to-face setting, the individual is looking at the coach and watching them take notes. And eventually they're wondering, I wonder what they're writing down. Or they're thinking, did you get that? Or they're thinking, what are you writing down there? And so they start paying attention to the note-taking. Now, it's funny, when you're online or on the telephone, they know you're taking notes because they're not seeing it. It's just a different issue. So, yeah, I have some people that they will be coaching somebody who's 2 doors down the hall, and they're doing it on the telephone because it gives each of them the opportunity to really focus on the conversation and where the coachee is truly exploring for themselves, and the coach is free to capture more effectively with the note-taking. So it's definitely a consideration, something you want to use both ways, do it several different times, and then make decisions. And of course, some of that is going to be based on preference of the individual coach and preference of their coachee. Online options for the companies that have people spread all over the place, obviously things like Skype and conference calls and those kinds of things are helpful, and then of course the telephone itself. Now, how do you actually go about setting up your coaching program? Well, the buy-in. So I mentioned that we have the webinar we did on the buy-in that goes into a lot more detail than what I'm going to cover here. How do you actually create buy-in? It starts with, yes, identifying. Gee, what are the challenges this organization is facing? Some common ones include engagement, productivity, etc. And you identify exactly what those challenges are. Once you know what the challenges are, your next step is, okay, what are the different options for addressing these challenges? And coaching is one of the options. There are going to be other options as well. And then you want to look at, okay, how effective are they? What's the research? What are the results people are getting with these different options? And it's fascinating when you go online and go to Google, for example, and just type in coaching ROI, return on investment, you will find a number of different reports looking at the payback for a coaching program. Those statistics are fascinating and incredibly helpful when you're making a case for a coaching program. So when you identify the need, you do your research on how coaching is working in terms of meeting those needs. You also want to have a little bit of a plan on this is what it is going to be in terms of having a coaching program. And an outline of, okay, this is what it takes in terms of time from our different staff members, in terms of budgeting, and then our expectation in terms of time for people doing the coaching and people being coached. And so you present that at the top levels of management. You create the buy-in there first. When you have the buy-in there, then you get them inviting in all the rest of your management levels, doing a very similar, if not the same presentation there, creating the buy-in at that level. And then you say, okay, yeah, we're doing this. So then you start promoting throughout the organization, hey, this is what we want to focus on, what we want to address. One of the new programs we're doing is this coaching program. Hey, give us your ideas and take input from people. And here's what's essential. When you get input from your employees, you want them to know that you heard it and that you're using it. So you want to have a mechanism in place to respond to them, say, hey, this is the input we've gathered, and here's what we're able to do, and here's what we got to keep on the table for a future possibility, etc. So you're creating buy-in throughout the organization. Your next step with your coaching program is your planning. Now, what do you do in terms of planning? Well, very often people are going and looking at other companies. What have they done with coaching programs? They're talking to consultants. They're talking to different organizations that both provide coaches and help in terms of setting up a coaching program. And you find out what's out there and what's working, etc. And then you start putting together a manual. Well, we're actually doing a blog series currently. Hey, what do you put in when you have a manual for a coaching program? Because that's part of your planning. So in the manual, you're going to have different policies in terms of, gee, what are the parameters of this? How does it work? Who's involved? How do we handle different things? Definitely want to include code of ethics, that kind of thing. You're going to have different forms. You'll have a coaching agreement form. You may have forms that are helpful in terms of the coaching conversation, different questions, different areas of focus, etc. You'll also want to have forms if the coach and the coachee decide, hey, yes, we do want to create a report that goes out to let people know this is what we're accomplishing with this coaching relationship. Then you create a form. Hey, these are the goals. These are the action steps. The coachee gets to input, hey, here's my progress report, what's going on. There's a room for additional notes. Before that information gets shared, the important note, and this goes back to your training and your ethics, is that the coachee agrees that this report goes out. So they're involved in choosing what information is contained. You have a form in there for how they're reporting out. All of the different forms that are going to come up in that coaching relationship. What else goes in there? Your processes. This is how we're identifying coaches. This is how we're identifying coachees. This is how we are matching them so that they work together. This is how long they work together, etc. So identifying coaches, think about what you're looking for in a coach. You want somebody that really is open and accepting of others, open to working with them, and really focused on them and what they want to accomplish. A coachee is, is everyone coachable? There's a lot of conversation around that one as well. A coachee is somebody who really does want to discover skills they want to enhance. It's somebody who does want to work on their own professional development and, in turn, enhance what they're accomplishing. As far as processes, how do you match them? Very often what you want to do is an introductory coaching where they have a chance, 20, 30 minutes, a mini coaching session, if you will, a little bit of a conversation around, hey, what is coaching, how does this work, etc. That's just two things. Hey, are we going to get along and be good partners in this coaching relationship? And then two, it gives the coachee a chance to buy in and say, wow, this really is a great opportunity. So you have your process in place for matching them in terms of meeting the parameters, etc. So typically you want to have a meeting every other week, just in terms of time management, etc. In some cases once a month, in some cases once a week, depending on what's going on. Most common is every other week, usually about an hour. And again, that gets tailored to what's happening. Sometimes people are going to gain more benefit from 2 hours once a month than they will from 2 one-hour sessions a couple weeks apart. So you do want to tailor it to what's appropriate. Figure out how much time on a monthly basis and let the coach and the coachee do their planning as far as their scheduling. Give them options in terms of how they're meeting. So you've got your process in place. In terms of the coaching relationship, having the process in place. Now, part of this goes back to the training for the coach, knowing, hey, this is what I do in my coaching process. Part of it goes back to the tools and the resources you have. In many organizations, you have various assessment tools that help the coachee in terms of awareness of different things they want to consider, explore in terms of developing their goals and their strategy. So you're going to have that in place. As far as determining your process for how long are they going to work together, ultimately the key is as long as there's benefit. If it's working for everybody and there's benefit to the ongoing relationship, great. If it's not working, there is no benefit, you either make a change in terms of who's coaching who, or at that point it may be better to end that coaching process and pick it up when it is appropriate and effective. You also want to start thinking ahead of how are you going to handle questions and concerns and conflicts, etc. So other pieces to that go into your manual. And the more you think about that ahead of time, the better off you are. The good news is many of those pieces are already in place within your organization, and you simply pull from other areas. Now, when you go to actually implementing the program, it is absolutely essential that you're engaging everyone at all levels of this as well. So you're starting out by, okay, now we've got the buy-in, we've got the program manual. Our next step is to start identifying the coaches. You're doing that. You're making sure that you're getting them trained and setting them up. Simultaneously, you're starting to identify, okay, who's going to want the coaching, who does it make sense for, etc. So you're figuring that out and creating that plan. Then what you're doing is the matching, just like we talked about in our process. So these three pieces of the how, what's happening, how are you creating buy-in, you're documenting the reasons for having a coaching program, you're providing the research in terms of how coaching is effective, what kind of results it gets, and you're involving people at every level in developing the idea and promoting it. How are you actually planning your coaching program? You're doing the research. What other programs are out there? What are people doing? How are they doing it? You're outlining what the program is going to look like. Get the feedback. Get the feedback from the highest level of management all the way out. And the reason you want to do the feedback before it's finalized is because if people are finalizing the plan and then get feedback, they've got too much invested in what they created originally. Get feedback very early on, and then from there, define your action steps for the program. Now, the implementation itself, for implementing the plan, is taking what you develop and going through it step by step. The more you involve everyone, the better off you are. Of course, you want to have a mechanism in place for measuring, hey, what is happening? What are the outcomes we're experiencing from this? And then be prepared so that you are adjusting for that. Okay, so we have very quickly moved through some key topics for establishing a program. Who's involved, when you're doing it, where you're doing it, and how you're doing it. Now what I'm going to do is give you a couple of resources available to you. So the Center for Coaching Solutions offers a couple of things. Number one, we've got consultants that can work with you on having a coaching program. Number two, we've got resources for you for your coaching program. Number three, we've got coaches available for your coaching program. If you are looking for training, the Center for Coaching Certification is a resource for you, there to enhance your coach training experience with quality, professionalism, and support. Now, in terms of a coach themselves, Center for Coaching Solutions is doing that. Sometimes the coach is, this is the person who's going to start the program in our company. We want them to have a coach, and we've got people available with that level of expertise. And sometimes it's coaches for some of the people in the program where you're using external coaches. One thing we want to offer, I know this is a quick time period, and we're almost up. We've got about a minute left. So we're going to offer you a free 30-minute consultation. How does that work? You send an email to me within 24 hours. I will reply to your email. I will give you a link to my calendar, and you can choose 30 minutes off my calendar to have a conversation. Whether you're interested in hiring a coach or interested in training coaches, whatever it is we can do to be helpful and support you with your program. My contact information is here, so you've got my name, you've got my direct telephone number. The Center for Coaching Solutions is the organization where we're providing services to help you with your coaching program, everything from information resources through having coaches. And then the Center for Coaching Certification is where we're providing the training for the coaches. These are sister organizations. Based on the questions that did come in, I just want to let you know I believe I've answered them. I built it into today's presentation intentionally, did some tailoring with that, and I think we've covered that. I am getting your comments in the question panel. I appreciate that. Glad you're here. Thank you. Thanks for taking the time. Thanks for doing your homework. And I appreciate that you gain value out of the conversation. Do let me know what else we can do to be helpful. A couple of you are asking access to this, we do load it on our YouTube channel along with all of our other recordings, and so you'll be able to find it there, the others that I mentioned, etc. So all of that information is available. And then, of course, the blog has the articles that are talking currently the series on having a coaching program. So excellent, great stuff out there. Thank you very much, and we look forward to being of service.